What's going on, people? Happy Monday and welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Last week, we went on the field with former Stony Brook football player Taj Deshawn. This week, we are taking things to the sidelines with former University and Team USA world champion cheerleader Millery Ingallina. She gives us insight on cheer world recruiting and what it's like being on the sidelines of one of the most powerful college football programs in the country. So again, welcome back to the A2A podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. So we are back with another A2A podcast, and today I'm interviewing a good friend of mine who actually used to share the screen with me and discuss football the last time we were both on camera together, Miss Millery Ingallina. Mill, it's awesome that you are able to take some time out and jump on here with me, mostly because, like I said, the last time we were on camera together, we were talking football, and, you know, in all the years I've known you, we've rarely talked about experiences and your background. Obviously I know a good bit about you, but there's still so much more that I feel I could learn, and that a lot of people that listen to this can definitely learn about. But let's first start with where you're from, kind of introduce yourself to the audience. Like I said, where are you from? What sports did you play? What were you involved in? So I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, so I'm actually from Meridian, Mississippi is probably the best place on the map that you could, relate to. It's actually Bailey, Mississippi, very, very small town. But yeah, that's where I grew up. And then I graduated high school, went to West Lauderdale High School, and then went to the University of Alabama, where I was a cheerleader on the co-ed team from 2014 to 2018. So really four great years to cheer at Alabama. Obviously, Nick Saban's still there. We went to, out of the 4 years I was there cheering, we went to 3 national championships and we won 2 of them. So that was a great experience. I majored in journalism and creative media. So now I work at Flow Sports in downtown Austin. And I also was on Team USA co-ed from 2016 to 2019. So I cheered on that team as well for 4 years. Fortunately, I was able to win 6 gold medals with USA. I have 2 gold medals from cheering at Alabama. So lots of really fun experiences in college and on USA. But yeah, now I work full time for Flow Sports in downtown Austin, and loving every minute of it.
Yeah. So you're from a small town, and being in, Mississippi and growing up, was sports a big part of your life? And how old were you the first time you became a cheerleader or played any other sport?
My goodness. Yeah. So sports have been a part of my life for, since I was 4 years old. And I actually started T-ball whenever I was 4, and my parents still talk about it to this day, but I was the only girl on my T-ball team, and I couldn't hit the ball very well, but I could run really fast. So it was funny. They would always say they could see my ponytail hanging out the back of my helmet as I would run to first base. It's the only way they could, you could really tell if it was me, because I was the only girl on the team. So, but yeah, from a very young age, sports have always been a big part of my family. My sister played sports. I played sports, my mom and my dad. And I played soccer as well whenever I was younger, soccer, softball. Whenever I was in high school, I was only a cheerleader just because our high school team was very competitive. So our coach, was very strict on, if you're going to cheer for, the cheer team, the competitive cheer team, that's the only sport that you're going to play. So, some of my friends and I, we would do, recreational softball. So we weren't playing for the school, but it was through a recreational group in the area. So that was fun. We still got our softball fix, but we were competitive cheerleaders. So sports have been a huge part of my life. I still love watching them today. Football is one of my absolute favorite things to watch. Of course, Alabama football. is something I won't miss a game. And that's another thing in the 4 years that I cheered at Alabama. I didn't miss a game, home or away. So just being in that kind of atmosphere, it just, once you leave, it's kind of hard to ever, get rid of, stop watching football, because it was such a huge part of your life for so long. And of course it's always entertaining to watch Alabama whoop up on some other teams. So yeah, love me some sports.
Yeah. So competition cheerleading was part of your life since a very young age. Was that the route that you wanted to take, or was it, hey, I love football, I love sports, I want to be a cheerleader, or was it always, competition, and were you more of a competitor?
Yeah. So, and actually I forgot to mention, I was a gymnast before, I began gymnastics, whenever I was like 6 years old, all the way up until 7th grade. So basically all the way through middle school, I wanted to just do gymnastics. That's all I ever wanted to do. I was, decent at it. So, and then when I got to middle school, a lot of my friends were like trying out, for the competitive cheer team. And so of course I was like, I want to do that as well. And so then I ended up trying out, I made the team, and then it became a lot to balance between the two. And I'm only in middle school and doing competitive gymnastics and competitive cheerleading. The schedules, kind of collided at a lot of times. So I had to choose. And ultimately at the end of the day, I had more fun cheering, just because, in gymnastics, obviously, in different ways, it is very much a team sport, but it's also an individual sport, and you have to compete for your own numbers. And in cheerleading, it's the opposite. It's all about your team. It's very rarely do you ever just compete yourself. Partner stunts one thing, but for the most part, it's a team sport, and that's what I loved about it. I have, all of my best friends that I've grown up with have been on cheer teams with me from, high school to college, to Team USA. Like I have friends all over the country because of that. So yeah, I knew I wanted to grow up and participate in something competitive. I didn't know really what it was at the time. I thought it was gymnastics. And then I kind of made the switch to cheerleading. And then after that, I knew I wanted to cheer in college. Didn't know where. I thought that my options were either the University of Kentucky, that's, very competitive in college cheerleading, and Alabama, which was only an hour and a half away from my house. My dad's side of the family was Alabama fans. My mom's side was Mississippi State. I knew I didn't want to go to state, but so yeah, it was between Kentucky and Alabama. And yeah, I knew I wanted to be competitive. Alabama had kind of the best of both worlds. They had an amazing game day experience, because, I already loved football. And then I wanted to also be competitive on, my own side, on the cheerleading side as well. So yeah, it was the perfect pick for me.
Yeah. So for, anyone else that I've ever spoken to, it's, a tennis player, a soccer player, volleyball, wrestling, football, you name it. And we talk recruiting. What's it like in cheerleading? Is there a recruiting process? Are you getting calls? Are you getting letters? What is that recruiting process when it comes to cheerleading?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of evolving through the years. So whenever I was trying to decide where I wanted to go in college, you have clinics that you go to. And whenever you go to these stunt clinics, you get to meet the coaches, you get to meet the current team members, and you kind of stay on you communicate kind of throughout the whole process. If they're interested in you, they, kind of let you know that. But of course, make sure that you understand you have to continue to work hard. But there wasn't in a lot of, for a lot of cheer teams, there was never really like a signing. Some teams did signings, just for fun or whatever. But yeah, there was not really like a solidified way of recruiting. I will say, as I've kind of gone, and that was whenever I tried out. So now it's a little bit different. Recruiting, I feel like is a bigger part of it. Coaches and current athletes will travel to different college events, looking for, so for example, they'll go to different college events looking at community college cheerleaders to recruit to bring on to, D1 schools. So that I feel like happens a little bit more often now than it did. And then in a lot of cases, nowadays cheerleaders do sign. They sign and, without even going through a tryout process. Some of them will still go to tryouts, but it's kind of known up front that they're kind of already signed and committed to the team. But yeah, and now there's something called, it's called stunt, the sport. And, there's different stunt combines, where colleges can go, to these different combines. I'm not sure exactly how many there are. I want to say around 8, but different colleges can go to these combines. Athletes go and basically perform like somewhat of a tryout. And then, these coaches get to kind of see these athletes that are putting themselves out there. And then, that's kind of a different form of recruitment as well. So definitely there's tons of different ways of, recruiting happens in college cheerleading. And I feel like over the years, it's definitely, progressing and getting stronger.
Yeah. What was it like for you? Did you get recruited by Bama and Kentucky? Were you picking between the two based on coaches and everything else, just like, a football player would be picking between Bama and Kentucky?
Yeah. So for Kentucky, they kind of did theirs a little bit more formally. You would go, whenever you went to their clinics, at the end of the clinic, the coach would either tell you that you got an invite to try out or you didn't. And so to try out at the University of Kentucky, you had to be invited. And you did that by attending a clinic. So I got invited to try out after I went to the clinic. And then at Alabama, it was not that way. So the coaches recruited you in a way that they let you know that they were interested in you and that they want you to come to tryouts. And usually when they, in a way, I guess my coach told me without telling me, if that makes sense, that, we want you to come to tryouts, continue to work on this and, different things, and kind of would tell you in a non-official way, like, hey, we want you on our team. And we kept in contact. And so, yeah, with Alabama, it was like you didn't have to be invited, but you kind of knew, that they wanted you on the team. You still had to make it through tryouts. You still had to have a great tryout because, you still had people that would walk into tryouts. You've never seen them before. And you're like, wow, where did this amazing person come from? Well, now, maybe your spot's a little bit more, up in the air because somebody just decided to walk in, so you never knew. But with Kentucky, you did have to be invited. So yeah, it was kind of two different roles.
Yeah. So and I'm going to equate this to sports that people are probably a little bit more familiar with, probably a lot through our conversation. But for me as a football player, I'm getting recruited. And then once I get recruited and once I say, once I said I'm going to Wilkes University, I've, even as a D3 player, you sign that letter, you sign on the dotted line. They know you're going. And then you start getting the workout plan and the training plan and everything else. And for you, and, we're sitting down right now, I know that you're 5'0". Most people do not know that you are that short just from us sitting here right now or listening, but you were somebody getting tossed in the air. So what's the exercise plan? What's the diet plan? What's, what are you working on, and how is your training like to get ready to be cheering on the sidelines every weekend, as well as stunt and everything else that you're doing?
Yeah, so it's actually different, honestly, from every sport. So when it came to us, our trainers and our nutritionists and everything, they would always tell us that, a diet is not what we would call this. It's, a way of life. It's, your nutrition choices. And so it's not even necessarily going on a diet. It's, how just forming a healthier way of, eating and whatever. So we kind of had to learn a new healthy lifestyle, like being a college cheerleader, and especially on the co-ed team where you are, like you said, thrown up in the air a lot. But really we had different workouts from our guys. So, we had the guys on our team, we had the girls, and the guys workouts mimicked football workouts very closely. And I know that because my husband actually cheered on the team with me And he played football in high school. He played football like his freshman year of college out at community college in Phoenix. And so the workouts that the guys did, and they were being ran by the same weightlifters, that were coaching, or strength coaches that were coaching the football team at Alabama. So their workouts were very close to that. As far as the girls, we didn't do a lot of weights. We did a lot of cardio. We did strength training. We, of course, still incorporated that a lot. But it wasn't like your super heavy lifts. We weren't like maxing out every day. We just were trying to stay in the best shape that we could for, high endurance and just, staying toned and working on, the little muscles that we use. Cause that's one thing in cheerleading is, it's all about your little tiny muscles like that, that make your technique better. And, so there's a stunt called a double up. So of course you can be as strong as an ox, but unless you have the technique that you need, you're not going to be able to execute that skill the best way possible. And the way that you do that is, just repetitive reps with those tiny muscles, turning the hands. And, so that's something that our guys really had to focus on. So yeah, it was a little different for guys and girls, but in different ways you could relate it to other sports as well.
So I ask you about that because obviously, and I was also a wrestler and a fighter, so I know about the mental side of dieting, or at least the way of life that you have to live. That mental side for you, how hard was that? Is that something that you kind of had to struggle with? And that's another thing that like a lot of athletes that we're seeing today, they now have not just strength coaches or tutors, they have mental health coaches as well. When you and the girls are going through these things, are you leaning on each other for help with, the mental side of it? And how hard is that aspect of dealing with being a Division I cheerleader with school and traveling and, maintaining diet and maintaining a personal life? And, you said it, your husband was on the team with you. So obviously you had that help there, but like just trying to be normal with all of those different factors. How hard is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had its challenging moments. When you're on a team like that, fortunately, everybody on that team is in the same boat you are. Everybody is working towards the same goal, and everybody pretty much is on the same, we had nutritionists, so they were always there to help us. But, and we had, our fun too. We would go, if we wanted to go get Mexican and splurge on, queso and whatever, we still did that. But we knew that at the end of the day, we had our own national championship that we were competing for. We had to be in shape to be able to last all day all game long on a sideline, for like a 2:30 kickoff, in Bryant-Denny Stadium, when it's, you're kicking off at the end of August, beginning of September, and it's boiling hot. Like your body, you have to think about those things, because there's been, a couple of games where maybe we weren't as hydrated as we needed to be, and it was absolutely miserable. And then of course it's just, when it comes to the mindset, it takes a very strong mindset. But keeping in mind your end goal of, setting yourself up for success when it comes to your own national championship. And luckily, like I said, you have all your friends, your teammates that become friends on the team. And I lived with my 3 best friends every year. So, we always had that support for each other. We gave it and we received it. And it was, one big team, and the guys on our team, we were all really close, and always get the question, did you do a sorority in college? And 99%, I will say maybe 95% of cheerleaders really don't, because your team is basically like your sorority. I mean, for, lack of better terms, but that's your friends, that's your friend group. You really do not have time to hang out with, and do so many other extravagant things, because, when you're, so like a weekly schedule, you have, of course, your class that you have to go through. You have practice every day of the week. You have 5 a.m. workouts. You have appearances that you have to make in front of alumni throughout the week. You have basketball games once basketball season picks up. You have, of course, football Saturday. You have away games when you don't have home games. Just pep rallies all the time. And then, of course, like you said, you have to find time for yourself. So that's few and far between. But, my family, like I said, I only lived an hour and a half away from the university. So, if my parents came up, that was another thing, just trying to find time for them. And then, so yeah, it's like your teammates, they were your family, they were your friends. It was, they were everything. So you pretty much went through that, all together. And yeah, it was mentally tough, but yeah, with the right people, we were able to make it work.
Mm-hmm. So for you, you weren't just a cheerleader for Alabama. You were also, and we'll get back to Bama and the football aspect of it and everything else, but you were also going for world gold medals. Was that something that you had focused on when you were in high school, or did that kind of come a little bit later once you realized that it was an attainable goal?
Yeah. So to begin with, I never thought that was an attainable goal. Like I never even, of course I imagined it. I dreamed of it. It was my dream to, one day be on USA. And two of my coaches that I knew from high school they cheered at University of Kentucky, and they were on Team USA. And I just remember I looked up to them so much because that was, a lifelong dream. Like I couldn't, at that point in time, it was like not even something that I considered to be possible for myself. And, I remember, I always tell this story. Her name's Allie Lumpkin, but she had a t-shirt on one day at one of our practices, and it was a Team USA t-shirt. And I remember telling her like, oh, I want one of those. And her husband, Jeremy, who also coached me and then was on USA, he was like, oh yeah, like we can get you a t-shirt. Or she said, yeah, we can get you a t-shirt. And he looked at me and he said, earn it. So, and in my head, really, that was like a very, I really remember that moment, because in my head, I was thinking, like, I could never, no, I could never. So, cause all I wanted was a t-shirt. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to have a USA t-shirt. But then, after that, I ended up making Alabama cheer. And there were a few team members from Alabama who made USA. So, and I knew of them. I didn't really know them very well. But then I truly believe when you surround yourself with really talented athletes, then, you're bettering your chances at becoming a really talented athlete. Because whenever I started at Alabama as a freshman, oh my goodness, I was absolutely terrible. I have no idea how I even made the team. Look back now and I'm like, I was so bad. But then I was walking onto a team filled with really incredibly talented people. And I truly believe that the only way I was able to better myself is because of, the people I surrounded myself with. So yeah, it kind of became like a thing, like, oh, okay, maybe one day it could be a possibility. And then my freshman year, I kind of got caught in the college scene a little bit, was having a lot of fun, and some of those goals started to slip through, and I kind of had a reality check with my coach, and he was like, if you want these goals, you need to tighten up. And so I was like, yes, sir. And that's all I needed to hear. And I basically made a complete 180, got back in the shape I needed to. And then I made Team USA the next year. So it was, it takes a good coach to kind of get you back on track and, to really see you whenever you're straying from your goals a little bit. And I really give a lot of credit to that coach. His name's Brian Gershell and Jennifer Thrasher. They both of them kind of saw me straying from what they knew I was capable of, and they pulled me back in really quick, didn't let me, get any further. And really, I give a lot of that credit to them, because I probably would have let myself continue to just, exist in the college cheerleading world and not really have any crazy goals. So once they kind of reeled me back in, I got back to it, and more so than I ever thought I could. And then I wanted to try out for USA the next year, and I made it. And so my first year on USA, I was an alternate, and kind of goes back to the same thing. Like even though I was an alternate my first year, just being a part of the team, being at training, being at the competition, and kind of seeing how it all worked, and just being in that atmosphere, still doing all the skills that everybody on the mat were doing. It really made me fall in love with USA Cheer. And I tried out again the next year, and then I made it, and then I made Matt. And then I cheered for 3 more years after that. So it kind of was just this, each step of the way, I tried to envision what the next step would be. And then, I had another goal after that, and I had another goal after that, until eventually I reached my goal. So, and it was the most insane 4 years ever. It was incredible. There came a lot of pressure with that, just because I knew that was kind of the peak of college cheerleading. Just cheerleading in general was being on USA. And I'll never forget the first time I walked out on the mat representing USA in 2017, standing behind the curtain, ready to run out. And I heard the crowd chanting USA, USA, and my heart began to beat very fast. Of course, I already have adrenaline pumping. And I just remember putting my sign, we're standing backstage still, and I just put my head in my sign, and I'm just really focusing on my breathing to slow my heart rate down. But then after that, the music started, and it was just this crazy wild ride. And from that moment, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the feeling of just the adrenaline and the crowd, and just how loud it is in that arena, and with the music and all the fans, and it's insane. And the culture, within USA Cheer is the most just strong and competitive and, determined. I definitely give a lot of my credit towards that program for really becoming the athlete and really the person that I am today.
Mm-hmm. And now your resume has the word champion on it a lot, whether it's national champion, world champion, just champion is just basically everywhere when you look at, your cheerleading resume. But the other side of that is being a student at Alabama. What is, and you talked about what you majored in, what your degree is in. Did you know you wanted to get into that when you got there? And how hard is it to balance Team USA, Alabama cheer, pep rallies, traveling to 3 national championships, being around NFL players, NBA players, all these people that are doing humongous things as well as all the humongous things you're doing? What's the academic side of that, and how do you stay focused on getting the degree that you now have?
Yeah, so it's funny you ask. So going into college, my degree was actually kinesiology. And I had this, dream. I wanted to open up my own cheer gym, but then, and have just, some type of medical background. Well, I took one kinesiology class and realized this is not for me. So I backed out of that really quick, just because, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like something I would love. And so I started maybe playing with the idea of sports reporting. And so I joined one of those classes. And then instantly, I knew this is exactly where I needed to be. I loved it. It was my way of staying, tied in with sports. And then I, ended up doing decent at it. So I really wanted to focus on that. I didn't really know what route I wanted to go. I knew I wanted it to be in sports. I didn't know if I wanted to be in front of the camera, behind the camera. So I did a little bit of both, and realized, I like both. I love doing both. And fortunately, with my job I have now, I get the opportunity to do both of those things. But yeah, at school at Alabama, and also cheering and with USA, it was a lot. And sometimes I look back and I don't understand, or even, I'm able to comprehend how I even made it work, how I even, how it was even possible. But again, a lot of my teammates did the same thing. There was only a few of us whenever I was there that were on USA, but we all were going through the same thing together. We were all in school at Alabama, having to make sure, all of our requirements were met in class. We had to go to all the same appearances. We had to go to the same practice weekends for USA. And I will say our coaches at Alabama were very, very strict when it came to academics. They watched, our academics like a hawk. And if they saw one grade starting to slip, they would bring you in. Luckily, I never had to have one of those meetings, but they were and they made it clear to the whole team that academics comes first, and life after cheerleading, after Alabama is what, you need to be focusing on, because after cheering at Alabama is over, you have the rest of your life ahead of you. So, really a lot of credit to them, because they, made sure that stayed a priority for us. But yeah, and sometimes here and there you would have a teacher or a professor at Alabama that didn't quite understand what Team USA cheerleading was. So they weren't completely bought in, and they weren't, willing to be flexible with you as far as being in class those 2 weeks. Because with USA, the way it works is you go to training for 2 weeks. That's it. You have 2 weeks of training, and really not even 2 weeks. It was more like 12 days. So obviously you miss those 12 days of class, and then you would compete at the end of those 2 weeks. So we put our entire routine together during those 2 weeks. So obviously there's assignments and, attendance and things that needed to, get done in class. And here and there you would maybe have a professor that was like, no, you can't miss anything. And luckily I didn't have a professor that said I was not able to miss class, but I had a professor that was still very, very strict on deadlines. So I remember there was one class I had to have something done the day of our competition. And luckily I found a way to kind of, make it work with what I was doing. It was a journalism class. So I was able to make that work. But I know a few of my teammates had professors that said no, and they weren't able to do Team USA. So luckily I did not have any of those experiences, but it's a lot. It is a lot. And it's, if you can make it work, it's totally worth it.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot, there's so much that always goes on, academically as well as athletically with every single person. And, I can't remember who else I was talking to, but one of the other people that I've interviewed, I can remember them saying that when they went on trips, they had tutors that were with them. Was the same treatment granted to the cheerleading team as was the football team that had tutors with them when they would have to fly to, Miami, fly to wherever else?
So we didn't have tutors that traveled with us. We had, of course, our athletic, trainers and whatever. But as far as for academic wise, we had tutors at the school that would help us, but they did not travel with us. So, and of course, if our coaches saw that somebody needed a tutor in a specific area, they would make sure that happened. And then if you really started to slip, they would make sure that you had like an allotted study hall time. So they did everything they could to make sure that, we stayed on track, but we didn't have tutors that would, travel on the road with us.
Yeah. So, I kind of mentioned it before, just kind of being around, NFL players, NBA players, people that are going on to be in our major sports. What's it like day in the life on campus during a football season? I've seen pictures of you running the team out on the tunnel. You're standing right next to Nick Saban. Kind of juxtapose that as up against what you just talked about of the first time running out, hearing the USA chants. What's that like for you running out of the tunnel next to Nick Saban in front of, 100,000 people?
Well, Holmes, I will be honest, whenever I was like in the moment and, it was happening, of course it was amazing. And that was like the only place I wanted to be in that moment. But looking back, I had no idea in that moment that I would miss it as much as I do. I'll never forget the first game I went back to after graduating. I sat in the stands and my friend Tucker got this really embarrassing video of me crying because the team is like running out. And so people are probably looking at me like, wow, she's really a crazy Alabama fan crying when the team runs out. But really it was, unless you're, there on game day and they're playing Thunderstruck, the team's getting ready to run out, the crowd screaming. It's like a feeling of, this is crazy. And it brings you back to whenever you ran out the team every single game. So of course I lost it, but, there's nothing like it. And I'll never forget this one time Nick Saban actually stepped on the back of my foot before we ran out. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like Nick Saban just like stepped on my foot and I'm totally okay with it. And this is crazy. But yeah, he would always tap us on the back and tell us when it was ready. It was time for us to run the team out. So, just knowing, the dynasty that he's created at Alabama, one day that'll be a really cool story to tell. Just, being there while Nick Saban was there during some of those really, really strong Alabama years, is something I'll definitely always, think is special.
You don't just have the stories though. Like I said, we've been around each other for a long time. I think I was in the office the one day you brought in the rings, and you guys also have a number of accolades that you get alongside the team. So, talk about that a little bit and I hate, always using that stupid journalism phrase, talk about that. That's really dumb. But in this situation, it works, right? Like, what's it like getting championship rings alongside the team who is also getting these massive championship rings?
Yeah. And actually, a lot of people always ask me, when the football team wins, you guys get a ring. And unfortunately not. We don't get a ring whenever the football team gets one. I feel like I would have even thousands more if that were the case. But yeah, I have I have 6 from Team USA. 4 of those are from ICU. 1 is from the first time that USA competed overseas in Poland. And then the other one was the second time USA competed overseas, out of the country, in Costa Rica. So I have 6 from USA, and then I have 2 from Alabama. 1 was from my freshman year, national championship. And then my other one is from my senior year. I won partner stunt with Ryan Clonch. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times people, I don't really wear them at all anymore. They're just, fun to have and, just, memorabilia, but every time I would wear them, people that were not familiar with, cheerleading and, the cheerleading world, they would assume that they're football rings. So yeah, that was always fun to get to explain to them, like, no, these are mine. I earned these. But yeah, they're just as big as some of the football rings.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're massive. If you did wear them, I mean, your arm would definitely be very tired and probably bigger than your other. But that's awesome. Like I said, I had seen them. I think there may be even a picture you showed me, but I remember you bringing some of them to the office, and that was always cool to kind of hear the story of how you earned your rings alongside the football team who's also earning them. So now we're at our 5 questions portion of the conversation. And the first question that I have for you is, what is a moment for you? And I know you talked about a couple of them, but what is a moment for you that had the biggest impact, whether it be Team USA or Alabama sideline, Nick Saban stepping on your foot? Like, what's a moment for you that had such a huge impact that you'll never forget?
I think it would have to be my freshman year. And I know I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but yeah, I was in the best shape of my life in, trying out, and I kind of fell off the tracks a little bit, got wrapped up in just a lot of like fun, social, the whole team did, but the whole team had their chance to kind of figure it out and work it out as, having fun and being a part of a team. And I'd not really figured that out yet. So just my coaches really reeling me back in, getting me back on track, and kind of just, bringing to my attention that I still have to fulfill, the things that I have to be a competitive cheerleader. So yeah, that was a very pivotal moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Second question, and I know that it's probably going to they're all going to probably revolve around moments or something like that. But do you remember the first time you ran out onto the field? What was that feeling?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I do. It was crazy. It was like a 95-degree game. Can't remember exactly who we were playing, but kickoff was at 11 a.m. In Tuscaloosa, and it was the very first time that I ran the team out, and I just remember thinking, "This is nuts. This is insane." That was the first time that I'd been on the field. I'd been to a couple of Alabama games before then, but of course, being on the field is completely different. And I just remember thinking, I never want this to end. You know, I feel like I was in a dream that I never wanted to wake up from. And it was crazy. And yeah, definitely a time I will never, ever forget.
Mm-hmm. Career wise, what was that first assignment? You know, you said once you stepped in class, you knew that that's where you wanted to be. But, you know, as a fellow journalist, you know that first assignment is kind of where you get that stamp of approval for yourself of this is what I want. What was your first assignment that kind of gave you the light bulb factor of, you know, journalism is where I belong?
Yeah. So the first few classes I took were actually not geared towards sports. They were just, news. And so I really liked that. But then once I joined a sports media class and I kind of got to tie in the things that I had learned, in my news media classes, kind of bucket that to sports individually. It was like little on-camera bits that we would do around campus on the previous weekend's game. And obviously I was on the field. So sometimes we can't really see exactly what's happening because there's tons of media standing in front of us. But just I was kind of at an advantage when it came to my other classmates because, I got to be on the field. I got to be right there in the action. So I kind of had a different perspective than all of them. And I really enjoyed that. I really loved, kind of getting to share my perspective on camera of something that I got to experience. So I did that a few times and then I really just started to fall in love with it. And it got to where it was easier. And yeah, I kind of went from there.
Mm-hmm. What's something about cheerleading, maybe a stereotype or a misconception or something that somebody doesn't understand? What's something about cheerleading that you wish the rest of the world that isn't, crazy like us who are into our sports of being into football or being into wrestling like me or being into cheerleading, what's something you wish other people understood about the world of cheerleading?
Oh, that is a loaded question. Of course, there are tons of, different stereotypes that cheerleaders as a whole are given. And really, it's just that the fact that a lot of people don't really see what cheerleaders do. Of course, you have so many different types of cheerleading. You have sideline cheerleading, you have all-star cheerleading, you have, there's so many different aspects when it comes to a cheerleader. And sometimes somebody's experience watching somebody on the sidelines and thinking, oh, maybe that looks a little scary is, not comparable to, competitive and, you're repping out these skills. And because ultimately when you're cheering on a football team, that is your sole purpose. And I remember at Alabama, this was kind of like a thing that they would remind us of, you were here to cheer on sports at Alabama. You're here to cheer on the football team, the basketball team, the volleyball team, the gymnastics team. Our program cheered for all of those sports. And kind of, secondary had to be the competitive side of us. So a lot of times they would only see us cheering on the sidelines of all these sports, and they didn't actually get to see what we personally were working towards. So yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes on cheerleaders, but, it's kind of something that along the way you learn to like go in one ear and out the other, at least, the bad stereotypes. And, you just try your best to not let those affect you.
Yeah. So last question, and it's the same question everybody gets. And I gave you a heads up on this one, obviously, but what's a piece of advice that you give either young Millery as a college freshman or the next generation coming behind you or a cheerleader that comes to you at, at a gym and says that they know who you are and just pick your brain? What's a piece of advice and something that you've learned that you would pass on to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, but obviously this is a little stereotypical, but once you envision your dream, don't let it fool you. Don't tell yourself that that's just a dream that you'll never be able to accomplish, because I did that to myself. And I was kind of told very quickly by, luckily, people that had best interests for me, to never count yourself out, never sell yourself short. And, if you continue to work hard and if you continue to put yourself in the right position as far as who you surround yourself with, then, you're headed in the right direction. And I truly believe that if you surround yourself with, people that are better than you and that are more successful than you, and you constantly have a goal that you're working up to, if you see somebody that's been successful in an area that you want to be successful in, do your best to work towards that, and, have them close to you so that they can help you get there, and, then turn around and do the exact same thing for the person behind you. So yeah, it's just really visualizing what you have as a goal, and then just doing all the things to make it happen.
Cool. That's awesome. I actually have one bonus question for you, and it's only because I know you. Have you and your husband, Ben, have you guys kind of come down from that first weekend of Texas versus Alabama, and how scared were you?
Oh my goodness. I think I lost a few years off my life during that game. Oh my. It was not a fun one to watch. I'm sure it was fun.
Did you guys go? Because it was in Austin.
We didn't go. We watched it at a local bar, but it was the most terrifying thing ever, because of course that's not what we were expecting at all. We were like ready for the blowout to happen. But yeah, and we work with a lot of, he works with a lot of UT fans. I work with a lot of UT fans. So of course, we've been hearing about it since then. But I will say UT just lost to Texas Tech. So, it's kind of, and I called it too. I have nothing against Texas Tech, nothing against UT, but, I knew that they were going to play their best game against Bama. I mean, you've got Steve Sarkisian, who came from Bama, now is the head coach of UT. I knew he was going to give Saban a good game, and he did. But yeah, it was a scary one to watch. Not going to lie. Yeah.
I refrained from sending any texts to you or Ben. I was like, I'm going to let them go. I know it's a rough one. Me, as a Florida State fan, I'm enjoying our 4-0 and looking very good for the first time since 2018. So, but I had to ask, did you guys go to the game? I wasn't sure if you took your son or anything else. I know he's probably going to be completely steeped in the Bama kingdom of love when it comes to Bama football. God bless that child. He's going to have a lot of Bama in his life. But, Mill, this has been great. I love catching up. Glad to see that mom life has been great and you're doing awesome. And I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me for a while, talking about yourself, which I know is not the easiest thing for you.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been awesome catching up with you. And yeah, it's a little, bringing back lots of memories. So it was definitely fun.
Well, you kept from crying, so I appreciate it. It's all.
I know. Good thing you didn't hit me in the heart with one of the questions. It's always fun to talk about, the memories at Bama, and because those were the greatest, times of your life. But so thankful to have those memories to look back on. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you for listening to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. To make sure you don't miss when a new episode comes your way, head to the Athletes to Athletes YouTube page to like and subscribe, or to Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcast. Again, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you again next time.